So I've just returned from a trip to the Melbourne International Flower and Garden Show, and I want to talk to you a little bit about that. Good morning and welcome to In the Car with Clint. This one is probably more directed at the landscape community than anyone else, but you know, you may find some benefit from it. So on Thursday we flew to Melbourne for the Melbourne International Flower and Garden Show, and when I say we, I'm referring to me and 3 Water Pro team members and some landscape folk, so people from landscape construction businesses, maintenance, design, and even our CEO of the Master Landscapers Association. We were due to leave, I think, on about 12:30 flight on Thursday. Because the Formula 1 was on in Melbourne, we had a few delays. Ended up flying out at 2 something, I don't know. I'd had a few Long Island iced teas by that point, so everything's a little bit blurry from there. But we arrived in Melbourne, got there later than we expected, and we were due to go to a cocktail event in the garden. So Landscape Victoria put on a cocktail event on the Thursday night of the Melbourne International Flower and Garden Show to showcase the gardens that have been built by landscapers, landscape designers, the boutique gardens, show gardens. I should remember the names of them. It's like, you know how Starbucks have those names like Grande and shit that kind of you have to know if you want to be in the go. I can't quite, I know one was boutique, but anyway, I'm going to say small, medium, and large. So went there, had a look at the gardens, but we were quite rushed, and my plan was to be able to go meet some people and then film some content the next day. And we did manage to film some content, but not enough. But in the interest of providing value, I want to talk to you more about what I learned rather than what I did. So we probably should have flown out earlier Thursday. I think on a business trip like this, you're best off taking care of business before you take care of pleasure, especially if you're taking care of pleasure is an extremity, which mine can be. And so we probably should have flown out early Thursday and looked at the gardens Thursday. The Thursday night's usually a big one. I learned from years past, so in 2018 or 19 we went, and Friday was a really, really rough day, and I'd organised a lot of stuff in the morning, and we won't be doing that again. But I did get to talk to a lot of landscapers about show gardens. And, you know, I've obviously done a podcast with Tim Harper from Space Capsule before, and he's a massive show garden fan. But this trip, I was able to talk to a lot more people that have participated in it. Obviously, Joel from InStyle Gardens, who, I've got to stop saying this because I think I'm helping grow his podcast, but Australia's most downloaded podcast about landscaping. But I spent some time talking to guys like Joel about what it's like to build a garden and what it means. And obviously there's been, you know, people in the past that have gone crazy at it. There's a company called Semken Gardens who build like multiple in a year, but it's a really expensive and time consuming and emotionally challenging process for these guys. And so what will happen is, in Carlton Gardens, which is in Victoria in Australia, they'll fence off Carlton Gardens similar to any other festival, and then the landscape construction crew get 9 days to build a show garden, and then they get judged on it, and then the public can come in and view it. And it's a very, very, like I said, a very expensive, time consuming and emotionally challenging thing to do, which firstly we need to kind of tip our hats to these guys, because the reality is you don't really get a return on investment for this. You do, but later, and you know, if you can't afford to put that money in and not get anything back for 5 years, then it's really hard. But I spoke to a lot of people and kind of come up with a list of the important things. So, 1, if you're worried about the return on investment, it's probably not a good idea to do it, right? You need to be looking at this from it makes me happy, and so I'm gonna do it. 2, sponsorship matters. The gardens that have the most money obviously can do the most things, and if you can get sponsorship from corporates, so obviously plants, stone, it's hard for irrigation suppliers to sponsor it because I don't think they're irrigated. I'm sure we could just give them money. Don't call me about that. timbers, that kind of thing. So, you know, you might get a discount, you might get to buy it at cost, but it's not going to be a case that, you know, unless you've got a very, very generous sponsor, that you get everything given to you. So it costs money. 3, preparation is paramount. So I know, like, for anyone that follows Joel on Instagram, he was preparing his area, his garden, for a long time in advance. The idea would be, for the most smooth installations, would be to have the majority of your garden kind of segmented and be able to roll it in on pallets and then just kind of puzzle it together, which a lot of them have done, and it works really well. 4, remember where you're working. So I think, like, I spoke to a few people about this. You can kind of choose, you can put forward a proposal to choose the space that you want to work, and then you get approved or not. I think it's important to think about where the public,
my birthday, and I
are going to be spending most of their time. So, you know, you might have one close to the entrance, or you might have one close to a tent or something else, or you might have one close to the food truck so people can sit there and look at it all the time. So think about that, because that matters. But also, the gardens aren't flat, so you're going to be building on some incline. And so when you're bringing in your puzzle, you need to be conscious that you're almost having to jack up corners of your garden to work. So if you're going to have an infinity edge water feature, or you're going to have pavers that meet up with something, and the idea is that it's perfectly level, you need to be conscious of the fact that it might sink in places when there's weight on it. So there was a water feature in one of the gardens this year that would have probably weighed close to a ton. If that whole water feature is pushing down on grass, if the grass is a little bit wet, and we're talking Melbourne here, so it's always wet, it's going to sink a little bit, and every little bit matters. So be conscious of that. 5, make sure the garden is fully independent and freestanding. I think some of the people, especially ones that are first year this year, probably weren't prepared for how hard it is to kind of make 2 walls join, and you know, they'll have to cable them together, or you can't stick anything in the ground. You can't lean things, like, even when you're constructing these gardens, you can't lean a shovel on a tree. The trees are all protected. Like, your garden is completely independent and freestanding. 6, ask for help. If people offer, take it. Like, I saw that, you know, a lot of the landscape community is such a beautiful community, and barring a few heroes, most people are there to help each other. And you see on the gardens, like, well, I didn't see it, but I heard about it, if someone's struggling, people will go throw some people at it. Or, you know, if someone's waiting on something, like if some stone hasn't been delivered, they'll go help someone else finish, and then they'll come back. And it's such a, like, as much as it's a competition, it's like golf, right? You can play golf with other people, and it's nice to kind of give them a bit of a got you on that one. But ultimately, you're trying to improve your handicap, and you're trying to get better, and so that's, you know, what these guys are doing. I think I'm up to 6. Enjoy the moment. So after they finish building the garden, it gets judged. They'll win a silver, gilt, a gold, best in show, all that jazz. Most of these guys go into it not expecting to win anything, right? Then as the years go by, they start chasing golds, they start chasing best in show. But from what I can tell, and I'm talking on behalf of other people, because I don't want to put words in their mouth, but I spoke to a lot of people over the weekend. It's just about doing it, and, you know, being able to stand back and watch the public enjoy your garden. And, you know, for people like when you do a trade like landscaping, or even running a business, short of the, like, kind of Telstra Business Awards or the Ernest and Young Entrepreneur and all that kind of stuff, the Fast 40, all that shit, that's, in my mind, and this is going to sound horrible, but I'd rather be honest, is more about them signing new clients than it is about genuinely, it's not, I don't know, I don't want to be unfair, because there's people that have won that really deserve it, but you know, it wouldn't be a silly idea for me to start a landscape awards, but you have to buy from me to enter. So enjoy the moments, listen to the feedback, talk to people, you know, be able to, like, have your, you know, family come and see what you do. It's not, you don't get that a lot, right? Like, we do have the awards, but when you build like this, you kind of, like, you got the same time frames, you got the same conditions, you got the same judges, it's all judged at the same time. I think it's kind of pure, but it's also ballet compared to sprinting, right? Like, I think sometimes when you do something that's judged based on someone's opinion, it's a bit hard to kind of go, well, that was definitely the winner. But anyway, so enjoy the moment. And then decompress. I think it's also important to have something to look like a goal to work on immediately afterwards. I know for me, in the past, achieving goals is quite dangerous, because once you achieve them, if you don't have something to go on to, you kind of can get into a weird space. And then be prepared for the success. I think a lot of the guys and girls that had built gardens, when I say girls, guys, I'm talking everyone, that had built gardens were not prepared for the amount of positive feedback and success that might have come from it. So, you know, if you're early in the business space, I would make sure that my pricing model's set. I'd make sure that my website's ready. I'd make sure everything's ready to be able to receive the influx of work that you are about to get, because you just put your garden in front of 100,000 people or whatever it might be. Some of them are going to call you. Some of them are going to ask you to price stuff. So, yeah. If anyone's ever thinking of going to the Melbourne International Flower and Garden Show, it's really quite cool. Obviously, you can kind of squeeze it in and do some other stuff in Melbourne while you're there. That's what we did. Formula 1 was on for this trip, so a lot of the guys went to watch the F1 on the Friday. But worst case scenario, there are a lot of bars, pubs, and restaurants, so you'll be fine. Next year, I hope to probably take 50. I want to really make this like a trip that we do every year. We had, I think, 22 or 24. Do some group dinners. Maybe next year. No, I'm not going to say that, but we've got to be careful how much alcohol we drink on these trips, because it gets a little bit out of it. But it's fun.